May say that Senator Kassebaum is so well known that she does not need an introduction. But frequently, it is those very people who do not need an introduction who most deserve one. In a few months, Senator Kassebaum will end an extraordinary and brilliant career in public service. For the past 18 years, she has served the people of Kansas and the people of America with courage, integrity, intelligence, compassion, and honor. Senator Kassebaum has always followed her conscience, has never sought personal glory, and has always exhibited independence of mind. She has always pursued what was good for Kansans and Americans, and never has she advanced her personal ambition. This is why she is so highly respected by Republicans as well as Democrats, by New Yorkers and Californians, and above all, by Kansans. She received her undergraduate degree from the University of Kansas and her law degree from the University of Michigan. She raised her family in Wichita and Mays, Kansas. Her 4 children, Linda, John, Richard, and Bill, are all graduates of Kansas State University. So as she has said to me a number of times, her loyalty is to KU, but her heart is with K-State. Well, she served on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. She served on the Labor and Health Committee and is now chair of this extremely important committee. She was, as you remember, instrumental in finally achieving tort claims relief for the aviation industry, a measure of vital importance to the aircraft companies in Kansas. And we've seen how well they've been doing since then. She voted for the crime bill because she thought it was right, even though she was criticized by many people in her own party. Most recently, her measure, greatly increasing health insurance coverage, co-sponsored by Senator Ted Kennedy, passed the Senate and was signed into law by President Clinton. Over the past 30 years, the Landon podium has seen many outstanding public figures who have contributed to our nation's well-being and to the vitality of America's democratic institutions. But none is more deserving of the honor of being a Landon lecturer than our speaker today, Senator Nancy Landon Kassebaum.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you. I'm honored to be invited back to speak as a Landon lecturer. It's a lecture series that has meant a great deal to my father, and it has meant a great deal to the family, and very proud of the quality of lectures that have been a part of this lecture series. It certainly helps to be a Landon lecturer following 2 successful football weekends at Kansas State University. I was asked to reflect on my 18 years in the United States Senate, and I would like to do so with some thought about the changes that have taken place and what I see as important lying ahead. When I came to the Senate in 1978, there were gnawing doubts about the future of America's role and our role in the world and our own domestic security. At home, inflation was escalating and interest rates were soaring, and the economy seemed stuck in what came to be called stagflation for those who remember that particular period of time. Abroad, we faced the relentless burden of the Cold War and the rising dangers of state-sponsored terrorism as witnessed in Iran and the taking of our hostages. We seem to have become, quote, the pitiful, helpless giant of President Nixon's fears, paralyzed by a malaise that President Carter made the mistake of highlighting. As I leave the Senate nearly 2 decades later, it's truly amazing the changes that have taken place. America stands as the sole world's superpower. The Cold War is over. Our economy is by far the largest, strongest, healthiest, and most competitive in the world today. We should enjoy with great confidence and feel enthusiastic as we enter the 21st century. But we remain uncertain and worried, and I think that's perplexing perhaps to all of us. We are better informed than any other generation in history, but we doubt the utility of our knowledge. We live longer and healthier lives, but believe that our quality of life is deteriorating. Our liberty is more secure than ever before, yet we long for a past era of freedom that exists more in our minds, perhaps, than in our history. The steady growth of our economy provides little comfort to university graduates looking for a first job, or older workers who have been laid off in the latest corporate restructuring. Americans have always lived in the intersection where hope meets doubt. The anxiety we feel is not new. Teddy Roosevelt's inaugural observation a century ago could easily describe America today. He said, "Our forefathers faced certain perils which we have outgrown. We now face other perils, the very existence of which it was impossible that they should foresee." Roosevelt and the progressive leaders at the turn of the century, including our own William Allen White, found themselves struggling to reconcile the structure of our constitutional government with the realities of the broad changes in our society. The first half of the 19th century saw the westward expansion and the liberating influence of the frontier, and we adapted the republic to fit the new agitation for popular involvement in our democracy. In the second half of that century, we changed our politics to accommodate the tremendous social changes spawned by industrialization. Labor and workplace issues, as well as economic issues, moved from the realm of private matters to center stage in our public discussions. In the first half of this century, we struggled to make our democratic institutions fit the reality of America both domestically and as a growing world power. And now, as this century comes to a close, we again are witnessing broad social changes beyond our ability to control. We have again, quote, outgrown the perils of the past, and we're suffering growing pains as our democracy struggles to adapt to the new realities. 2 years ago, we elected Republican majorities in both houses of Congress for the first time in a generation. The goal of reducing and redefining federal power took on an air of inevitability, as even President Clinton came to realize when he said the era of big government is over. In fact, that era was fading long before President Clinton acknowledged it, and even well before Republicans gained congressional power. The Republican victory and the president's concession were not the beginning of a new era. They were rather the confirmation of a fundamental change that flows from underlying trends that have been reshaping both our government and our society. The forces now tugging at our society are many and varied, and sometimes very hard to define. I believe there are three, however, which represent changes that are now underway. First, we face a revolution of technology that is fundamentally reorganizing our lives. I'm not going to be one who's ever going to be at the cutting edge of this revolution. When I heard they were going to email and interconnect all the senators by email, I decided it was time to come home. But when I entered the Senate 2 decades ago, just 2 decades ago, the computer industry was still in its infancy. Today, computers are the centerpiece of nearly every office and in many homes. The telecommunications industry has exploded with satellite broadcast, fax machines, cellular phones, and a host of other devices. These changes have directly affected our politics. Lobbyists in Washington can generate thousands of grassroots letters from Kansans on any issue that affects them. Talk radio hosts, CNN or C-SPAN, can activate many listeners to rally around the issues of the day. And yet, while all of us have more information, I wonder if we are really making any better decisions because of all this wealth of information. If our democracy has become more direct and interactive, it also has become less reflective for us all. This trend toward instant democracy weakens the ability of our institutions of government at all levels to, as Madison put it, refine and enlarge the public view. But the more profound effect of the technology revolution, I think, may be the indirect effect on our democracy through profound changes in the structure of society itself. Both political parties have come to focus on the social ills in our society. But too often, I believe, the debate misses the point. We ask whether it takes a village or a family to raise a child, when most of us really believe the obvious truth is that it takes both, and that the government has a little role to play. Our social problems are real, and their causes are many and varied. But changing technology is a common denominator in many of them. The disintegration of our communities has been assisted by the high mobility of people and families moving from city to city. The flight of talent and businesses from our inner cities and the weakening of Main Street in our small towns has been made possible by the ability to drive the family car or take mass transit to large shopping malls, frequently in the suburbs. The difficult debate about access to health care in our society has as its core the high cost of treatment, much of which is driven by the ever-expanding miracle of modern technology and the desire to have it close by and easily available. And while the breakdown in our families and the general decline in civic involvement have many causes, there can be no doubt, I think, that every hour spent watching television is an hour that is not spent playing or talking with family or volunteering in church and community activities or quietly reading. It has become a dominant thread that affects each and every one of us. Increasingly, I think our lives seem chopped into isolated segments of home or school or work or church or friends, rather than a coherent, connected whole. Each piece is strung together by an extended web of transportation or telecommunication or other technologies now at our disposal. None of this is to criticize the advances in technology, which have contributed tremendously to our society as a whole. But I think we're less than frank if we deny that we have not yet come to grips with all the effects and frustrations of the new tools that we have invented. The second force reshaping America is the growing disconnection between the people and the government at all levels, but particularly the federal government. Ironically, while more Americans than ever before are informed about and active in governmental affairs and at the federal level as well, many of our citizens have concluded that Washington is more remote than ever before and growing more annoying to them every day. But the federal government is not our only problem, and shrinking it, while important, is not alone a solution to our ills. I believe it's important to return more power and authority to our state and local governments. But local solutions without local involvement will do little to reinvigorate our democracy. You introduced the chairman of the Kansas Board of Regents and another member of the Board of Regents. I was going to ask how many in this audience, in this fine institution of higher learning, knows all the members of the Kansas Board of Regents. I must confess I didn't either till I realized if I was going to ask, I better know the answer. Or members of our State Board of Education, or even our own county and city commissioners. It is important that we know, because these are people very involved in making decisions that affect each and every one of us, sometimes far more important than who is sitting in Washington. So I think we have to feel that it's important to know. We have to be willing to be involved in local decision making. If leaders at all levels pull together with citizens, we can open the way to an era of civic revival. I happen to feel that's very important. Is it only sort of a hoped-for desire? I think not. But it doesn't grab headlines. It doesn't make the news as something that's exciting and happening every moment of the day. It requires a willingness to engage in a broader discourse on the issues. What's most distressing to me in our political campaigns today is that we have found attack ads, negative campaign ads, are what captures the public's attention, and the polls go up. And as that's reflected, then everybody thinks they need to run negative ads, trying to show that they increase taxes less than their opponent. And it's a back and forth. No, no, you voted for tax increases 40 times. No, no, you did 45 times. We miss entirely the ability to pull together a broader, thoughtful discourse on the important issues before us. I don't know if that can change, but somehow we have to be willing to engage each and every one of us in requiring that that be done, or we're going to find ourselves entering the 21st century ill-prepared to meet our responsibilities at home, which can only mean that then we're ill-prepared to meet them, the world at large. With the loss of community and a disconnection from government that may seem abstract, they form a powerful interaction with each other, and with, I think, the third concrete fact of our national life today. That is the relentless growth of our national debt. I almost hesitate to bring up the budget because since 1978, I've been talking about the budget. Most of us have in one way or another. But while our yearly federal deficit has shrunk in the past 4 years, the total debt and its unavoidable interest payments continue to rise. The growth of the debt in recent years is nothing short of astonishing. In fact, it is even hard to believe. In the first 200 years of our nation's existence, our debt, the total national debt, was less than $1 trillion. Since that time, the past 20 years, we have increased that now to $5 trillion. Just in the last 20 years, we've added $4 trillion. At a minimum, taxpayers will spend $1.8 trillion in the next 6 years just for interest on the national debt. The federal budget each year is really more than the sum of numbers in the budget. It is the sum total of decisions that together we have made about the nature and future of our government. Our deficit shows not just an imbalance in our national pocketbook, but I think an imbalance in our national thinking. Dealing with the budget deficit in the abstract is popular. Everybody has been supportive on the whole of a constitutional amendment to balance the budget. But does that really get us there? If indeed we can't begin to have a debate about what constitutes 60% of our budget and be honest about what will be required, then I think we aren't going to get there. And in the reality, we just don't like to think about what that balance will require. Simple math tells us that any effort, an honest effort to balance the budget, must find significant savings in the entitlement accounts: Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, other direct payments to individuals that now consume about 60% of the budget. Steps such as means testing Medicare or raising the retirement age for Social Security are steps that must be considered now, because we must phase in these difficult decisions in order to guarantee that the next generation will be able to benefit from these same programs that have added a great deal of security to those reaching retirement age, both in sense of pension support and health care support. But if we can't recognize that we are all living longer, the demographic changes that affect that, then I think what we'll end up doing is putting it off till the decision comes so late that it will be almost impossible to make the changes that are required. We owe it to the next generation to do it now and be honest about what it will require. Even, I think, the discussions of these highly unpopular options we've put off, and that a lack of leadership that is able and willing to make a clear and compelling case for such necessary and long-term actions, I think, must be provided. These three trends in technology, civic involvement, and fiscal reality paint a portrait that could be regarded troubling for our republic at the close of the 20th century. But we have faced grim times before, and our nation has emerged from them all the stronger. I believe the promise of this moment in history is large, but the difficulties could also well loom ominously. America is in a period of transition with no clear guideposts pointing the way to the future. We're not alone in this. Whether it's Europe or Russia or China, Latin America or Africa, all are affected by many of the same social and economic forces that are driving changes here at home. In our time, we again face what President Eisenhower called the reoccurring temptation to believe that some spectacular and costly action could become the miraculous solution to all current difficulties. Today, our frustration tempts us with term limits, lobbying reform, campaign finance reform, applying private sector laws to Congress, and a host of other reforms. Whatever their merits may be in these reform efforts, we know in our hearts that these are not real solutions to our most difficult problems. Half a century of growing federal power and rising national debt cannot be reversed in a single Congress, nor perhaps even in a single decade. But I'm confident that these trends will be reversed over time, because the demand for that change does not flow only from Congress or the Republicans, but from the most basic power of our democracy, and that is our citizens. If we want governments, federal, state, and local, that can help us solve the problems, we must be prepared to engage in the never-ending and tedious process of continual oversight and review of our government. It's one of the most important responsibilities that we have. It's one, I think, that we do less successfully. There simply is no substitute for persistence and vigilance in our public affairs. Unfortunately, that seldom captures headlines or a 30-second soundbite on the evening news. But it is at the very heart of good governance. It's at the very heart of successful governance. In both domestic and foreign policy, America has built a structure of institutions, policies, and programs that were vital to overcoming the Depression, winning World War II, withstanding the terrors of the Cold War. Now the Depression is long past and World War II is history, and the Cold War has been won. It is time, in fact, it is essential, that we build new structure to fit the present realities both at home and abroad. It is not enough that we are prepared to do away with programs and institutions that are flawed. We must also be prepared to advocate solutions to the problems that remain. The voters are not demanding that we abandon families in poverty, cut off health care to the needy, or turn our backs on the elderly and the disadvantaged. To the contrary, I think most people are distraught not because we are doing these things, but because we're doing them poorly. What people are demanding is a more effective approach that produces real results. That's what I believe we all care about. I believe we must revive an old approach from the early days of our republic, a genuine federal, state, and local private partnership in which government seeks the best match of needs and resources and responsibility. And let me just give you two examples, one of them being education. We talk a lot about education today. I believe it's the very foundation of all that we become and all that we are as a country. That's why quality and excellence in education couldn't be more important to us as a nation. It's something that each generation has always handed off as a legacy to the next generation. But government can't solve that problem of excellence in education. It has to come in our own communities, in our own families, saying we demand quality education. And we're going to make sure that we're willing to participate in that in each and every community. That we have the best elementary and secondary schools, and that when our students graduate from high school, they can go on to higher education or vocational technical education with the knowledge they have the basic skills of reading, writing, and arithmetic, and a discipline to understand why it's important. It is important to us today because we are an interdependent world, and if we are going to maintain the strength of that leadership, it must come from education. The federal government pays a very small portion of education. Student loans become important. But for the many students today who have and must rely on student loans, we do a great disservice to those students, and there are many here today. If you're graduating from high school and have to come to college to take remedial reading, that's not your fault, it's ours. And it isn't the federal government's fault, it's for each and every one of us to make sure we pass that legacy on of a desire for excellence in education. Crime is another example. We all worry today about violent crime. What's happening to our neighborhood, fears for our children. We can't solve that in Washington either. It really depends on each and every one of us in our service organizations, in our own communities, saying it isn't going to happen here. We can only cut the crime rate if we're willing to participate in this, each and every one, by saying we have to have a dedicated and capable local prosecutors. We have to make sure we're willing to enforce the laws that are on the books, and that we can be tough in that enforcement. We have to be prepared to also have programs that help serve in our communities, in our schools and in our churches, that can provide the avenue for children to have some other resource than just looking to the crime that escalates into ever greater violence. We can't just solve it in Washington with laws and with money. It has to come from a deep desire that we can patrol our blocks. We can have a neighborhood watch that works and that we're all willing to participate in. We need the social programs that match the needs of the local community. These are things we can do, we must do. And we mustn't tolerate the type of violence that today becomes so permeated simply because it's continued to ratchet up to the point we don't notice anymore how violent just our rhetoric becomes. I think those of us who are in public service today have to be role models to a certain extent. If we use violent rhetoric, if we use negative campaign efforts, we're only adding, I believe, to the cynicism that many feel towards each other and certainly towards politicians. And that's why I feel so strongly that these answers must come from each and every one of us as we become more and more engaged at home. Finally, I think as in every period of challenge and uncertainty, opportunities ahead will place a high premium on bold and effective leadership and on informed and active citizenship. We pull together, and if we can do this, I think we can open the way to an era of civic revival. If that teamwork fails, the challenges will multiply and the opportunities will evaporate. I believe it's an exciting challenge. Real leadership takes risks. While many Americans criticize our government as out of touch, the reality is that never before have so many of our leaders worked so hard to discover what the public wants and then to follow it. Polling and focus groups and rapid communications keep our public officials more in touch with public opinion than ever before. We travel back and forth to our states constantly, and yet people say we're out of touch. Indeed, we are so often so closely in touch that I think we're buffeted by swings in the public mood that can change almost overnight. And without leadership to point the contradictions, the result is a sort of disconnect between desire and reality that has led to our budget problems today. You know, in polling, and I've become very critical of polling, we seem to do it every 10 minutes. It's sort of like taking your temperature and it goes up and down, and whichever way the polls seem to go, we all run that way, and then the next day they're this way and we go that way. And it reminds me of a story of a wonderful salesman who knew how to make a pitch, and he came up to the country store and saw a gentleman rocking on the porch, and this dog was lying by the rocker, and the salesman said, "That's a beautiful dog. Does your dog bite?" And the man rocking in the chair said, "Nope." So the salesman reached down and patted the dog, who of course leaped up and grabbed the man's arm and took a hunk. And he said to the man, "I thought you said your dog didn't bite." And he said, "It doesn't. That's not my dog." So, as with polls, it depends on how you ask the question, because you can get a very different answer depending on how you ask the question. It's really interesting. Just take a look at how some of the polling questions are asked and the various facets of an answer one can get. I think real leadership is informed by the public mood, but it does more than just follow the polls. Real leadership offers ideas, defends them, refines them, and is willing to look at different ideas and adjust to them as they come along. Real leadership is not just continual campaigning, it's governance. And no one knows that better than Governor Graves, who I think has done a superb job as governor of our state. Leadership tries thoughtfully to understand and make sense of the dramatic changes in our society. Real leadership, in short, seeks to bring coherence to the perpetual chaos of democracy. Nothing about a successful democracy is neat and tidy. It doesn't give us perhaps a sense of a certitude of where we go or where we want to go or what we should do. But it creates an environment that we should never want to lose. Citizenship itself is an indispensable form of leadership. And citizenship takes time, time to listen, time to care, time to reflect, and time to participate. I feel like I'm speaking to the choir here today because all of you obviously care or you wouldn't come, or else some of you may be getting class credits for attending. But I think that what we need to do is talk about it as we visit with others. Others who may say, what good does it do to participate? What good does it do to vote? We have to and be all of us engaged, or we won't find the answers for us today. Much has been made about the rising influence of the so-called social conservative wing of the Republican Party in Kansas. I differ with the views of the movement leaders on a number of important issues, but I have deep respect for the manner in which they have pushed from the grassroots their issues forward on our state's agenda. They have organized locally, they have vigorously advanced their arguments and recruited candidates, and they have made a case to which many voters have responded. That's the essence of democracy, and we wouldn't want to change it for a minute. When Benjamin Franklin emerged from the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1776, and I always marvel that that great document was put together without staff, without the press, and without air conditioning. He was asked what the delegates had wrought at that convention, and he replied, "A republic if you can keep it." Ours is a delicate system of government. Its durability comes not from the words on the parchment of our Constitution, but from the determination of each generation of Americans before us to give those words life and meaning for our times. We bear that same responsibility. I believe that we can fit our ever-changing government to our needs today and again tomorrow, and that our timeless heritage of personal liberty and free government will rise time and again above the passions and fears of the moment. I believe that we possess the humility to know that God gave none of us a monopoly on truth or wisdom, and to work together in respect for one another. I have enormous confidence that I'm leaving after 18 years in the United States Senate, that we can fulfill in these very challenging times the agenda for the future. I have been proud and honored to serve Kansas for 18 years. It's been a privilege. And the reason I'm so confident for the future is that I have seen so many Kansans as I have visited around the state these 18 years, both young and old, who reflect the very essence of caring and dedication. It may not always seem apparent as we struggle with one issue or another, but it is there and it will survive. And I just want to say thank you particularly to special friends who've been supporters and helpers all these 18 years, and to family. Thank you very much.
Before we take some questions for the Senator today, I would like to take a few minutes to award the Senator a special honor. As some of you might or might not know, the Kansas Board of Regents does not permit the Regents universities to give honorary doctorates. But we have an important new honor to bestow on Senator Kassebaum today. Today, Kansas State University is inaugurating a new Medal of Excellence, which we are presenting for the first time to Senator Kassebaum. This handsome medal is the ultimate tribute that Kansas State University can give a person for the excellence that they have shown over a long period of time. In my introduction, I gave you many of the reasons why we and all Kansans and all Americans hold the senator in such high esteem. Now, I only want to add that Senator Kassebaum reminds us of the great Roman general Cincinnatus, who left his farm to lead the Roman legions to victory. And then, instead of seeking power and personal gain, returned to his farm. Senator Kassebaum left Maize, Kansas 18 years ago. She has been a magnificent United States Senator, and now she willingly returns to Kansas to her ranch in Morris County. Her excellence is an example and a lesson to all of us, and a reason that today Kansas State University bestows on Nancy Landon Kassebaum the Medal of Excellence. Wow. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. This is a great honor. It's a formidable medal. Will this keep me out of trouble?
It will, forever and ever and ever.
Thank you very much. I'm deeply honored.
Would you be willing to take a few questions? Well, I have one other little thing here, and she is willing to take a few questions. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased today to announce as well that Kansas State University has established the Nancy Landon Kassebaum Scholarships in her honor. This will be the most prestigious scholarships the university will offer to the very best students of this state. So now we will open this forum to some questions, if you have them. And you can see the mics on your right and on your left. So please.
This guarantees that I can answer the question, I hope.
Senator Kassebaum, first of all, I'd like to thank you very much for being with us here at K-State this morning. And I'd especially like to thank you for your many years of distinguished service to the people of Kansas in the U.S. Senate. It's a great privilege to have you here with us. My question, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act of 1994 is scheduled to be voted on in the Senate tomorrow afternoon. Briefly, for those who are unfamiliar with the bill, INDA extends to sexual orientation federal employment protections which already include race, religion, gender, national origin, age, and disability. Thus, INDA extends fair employment practices, not special rights, to lesbians, gay men, bisexuals, and heterosexuals. Senator, you've gone on record in the Senate debate as saying that passing INDA could lead to prolonged litigation, which could further divide the workplace and would also be very expensive. Could you clarify me the following? Why should the cost of potential litigation be given greater value than the elimination of prejudice from our workplaces? Thank you.
Thank you, and you've framed the question and some of my own response very well. I think none of us would want to see discrimination exist. I wish we could end it always by laws. In this instance, I felt that we were expanding to cover hiring and firing practices under the Civil Rights Act in a way that I thought would potentially be far more litigious and would create even greater dissension in the workplace and perhaps not foster the kind of tolerance that we would wish to see. I believe by expanding to compensatory and punitive damages, we don't just say that those who would be fired would be rehired or even back pay, but I do firmly believe that it really ultimately would create greater tensions. As much as we would wish to be able, as I say, to end bylaws, I am not certain that we're not today moving more and more into the workplace and firing and hiring requirements, which are going to prove ultimately far more disadvantageous than advantageous. We can't always legislate tolerance, and as much as we might wish so, I don't think a good teacher should be fired if indeed they are homosexual. It should be based on ability, but I feel strongly that it is not our responsibility at this point to write a new guarantee into the Civil Rights Act.
We have a question right over here.
Okay. Now that you've retired from the Senate, what are your plans?
I am looking forward to, I have 6 grandchildren, and while they're still little, being able to help babysit, although as my children said, right, Mother, we're going to see just how often you come back to babysit. And then farm in Morris County, near Burdick, Kansas, and I'll be back there.
Hi, Senator. Thanks for coming. I have a follow-up question on the ENDA that I'd like to ask very quickly. In the recent debate on ENDA, you stated that prejudice should be overcome by education and not by government intervention. Senator, as a concerned citizen, I'm very confused and frustrated as to how this sort of education be brought about and how this would be less expensive than merely passing ENDA. And until the entire nation is educated, I'm not sure I know what advice or hope I can give to a gay man or a lesbian in Manhattan, Kansas, who today can be told, you're gay, you're fired. This is legal and it happens. Not here at K-State, because we have sexual orientation included in our non-discrimination policy, but it does happen in Manhattan and all over Kansas. So my question to you is this: what would you tell a person if he or she told you, I've just been fired from my job because I'm gay?
I said that I think it should be on one's ability. And I also said in my floor statement when I spoke Friday on the floor that I thought education was probably many would feel was not going to be enough of an answer to satisfy that. I'm not indicating that we should have grand programs in education. Just each and every one of us recognizing that no matter what, one should be viewed on their abilities. I don't know how we do it except in just acting on it ourselves. The university, there are some states that have taken it, businesses that have provided the way and policies to that regard. But I also think there's a counter approach to that. If someone who is working for you who isn't doing the job as you would wish, but that they were homosexual, either gay or lesbian, then you couldn't fire them without perhaps then being in the courts in litigation. When actually you would want to, I think, be able to fire and hire based on one's skills and ability. We haven't reached that point yet always, and we may never, because it would be certainly in a world in which we would be erasing intolerant natures which do unfortunately still form much of our society in one way or another. And I myself feel this is not the way to go to answer that question.
Thank you.
Here's one more question over here, and then we should.
I just want to give you some appreciation because I'm glad that you take our future education into concern.
I certainly do. Thank you. that perhaps is a good one to end it on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.